The sun had barely risen, but Darius King was already stepping out of his sleek black sedan, his every move exuding power and purpose. As a CEO, he was used to being treated with the utmost respect, especially in places where the elite gathered, like the first-class cabin of a private jet. He had built an empire, and this was just another flight, another day of effortless luxury. But as he settled into his seat, the tension in the air was undeniable. The flight attendants greeted him with polite smiles, but there was something in their eyes, a flicker of hesitation that didn't sit right with him. Darius, ever perceptive, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His usual request for herbal tea was met with an apology. "Sorry, we're out of that." The coffee she offered instead wasn't the issue. It was the dismissive way she handed it over, as though he were just another passenger. The frustration bubbled up inside him, a quiet simmer at first. But then came the spill. Hot coffee splashed across his suit. The burn was instant, the sting of the fabric ruined. The heat of the coffee was only matched by the heat rising in his chest. "Get me the pilot," Darius said calmly, his voice steely. There was no hesitation. What happens next? Watch till the end to see how one moment of disrespect can change everything. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Life Stories New for more powerful stories that demand attention. The tension in the first-class cabin was palpable, thickening the air as Darius King settled into his plush seat. The flight was supposed to be simple, a moment of relaxation before his big summit. But there was an underlying unease that he couldn't shake. It wasn't just the sleek, pristine environment that felt off, it was the people. The attendants moved about with that sterile politeness, but their eyes flicked to him in a way, as though they knew something he didn't, as though they were waiting for something to go wrong. Darius was a man of precision, a man used to commanding attention and respect without so much as a word. His tailored navy suit, the crisp lines of his shirt, the polished shoes, every detail was intentional. It was how he had built his empire, how he had earned his place at the top. And he wasn't about to let something as trivial as a missed cup of tea ruin his day. But as the attendant approached with a tray, Darius's eyes narrowed. She smiled politely, setting the tray down with a nervous flicker in her eyes. "Mr. King, we're out of the herbal tea you requested," she said, her voice shaky. "Would you prefer coffee instead?" It wasn't the coffee that bothered Darius. It was the dismissive way she offered it, the kind of indifference he had learned to recognize as disrespect. "I always order herbal tea," he replied, his voice even but with a sharp edge. "Is there no way to get it? I have been on flights like this before." She hesitated, glancing at the empty space beside her before responding in a rushed tone. "I'm afraid we really don't have any more, sir. Here's your coffee." Darius's eyes stayed fixed on her. She was apologizing, but there was something hollow about it. She didn't seem to care. Her body language screamed discomfort, but there was no genuine empathy, no understanding of what this moment meant. "Excuse me?" Darius's voice dropped, growing colder. "You don't get it, do you? I don't care for coffee." She fumbled with the cup, her nervous hands shaking. For a split second, it seemed like the whole world slowed down. The coffee tilted, then spilled, splashing across Darius's pristine suit. His hand shot out to try and stop it, but it was too late. The hot liquid soaked through the fine wool, leaving an ugly stain on his chest and sleeve. "Damn it!" Darius hissed under his breath, rising from his seat. Immediately, the coffee still dripped from his sleeve, the burning sensation searing through his suit. His face tightened, not from the pain, but from the realization that this wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just an accident. It was something else entirely, something he had been conditioned to deal with time and time again. The attendant stood frozen, mortified, eyes wide. I'm so sorry, Mr. King. I didn't mean to," she stammered. But Darius wasn't listening. His mind was already working, calculating. "Get me the pilot," he snapped, his voice sharp as a blade. The attendant froze for a second longer, eyes darting nervously between Darius and the coffee stain, before nodding and quickly retreating. Darius felt the weight of the moment settle in. This wasn't just about the spilled coffee. This wasn't even about the drink anymore. It was about respect, something he was used to demanding, not asking for. Something he had earned through decades of hard work. As the minutes dragged on, the tension in the air grew. Darius's mind replayed the moment over and over, the spill, the dismissive attitude, the insincerity. His fingers drummed against the armrest, his anger simmering beneath the calm exterior he projected. But Darius wasn't someone to act impulsively. He knew that to make the real impact, he needed to be calculated. The door to the cockpit opened, and Carl, another young flight attendant, appeared. His face was pale, and Darius could see the uncertainty in his eyes. "Mr. King," Carl said, his voice stiff, "I'm afraid the captain is here to speak with you." Darius stood, towering over Carl as he strode down the aisle. There was no apology in Carl's voice, no recognition of the severity of the situation. Darius knew this was his moment to take control, to let them understand just how far this would go. The captain, a man in his 50s with a perfectly pressed uniform, stood near the cockpit door. His expression was neutral but wary. "You requested to speak with me, Mr. King?" Darius didn't waste a second. He was already in command of the room, every word laced with authority. "I want you to change the flight path," he said, his voice calm but edged with cold precision. The captain blinked in confusion. "Sir, we're already well on our way to the destination. Changing course at this point would be difficult." "I don't care about your destination," Darius interrupted. "I've worked too hard to be treated like this. This entire flight, this airline, needs to understand the consequences of disrespect. I want the course changed. Now." The captain hesitated, looking between Darius and the flight path chart. "But sir, we'll need to contact the control tower. It could cause a delay." "I don't care about your schedule," Darius's voice grew harder, each word landing like a hammer. "Make the call. I'm not going anywhere until this is addressed." For a long moment, the captain stood in stunned silence. Darius could feel the weight of the decision settling in. He had made his point. It wasn't just about the inconvenience of spilled coffee or an apology, it was about proving a point, making sure that the airline understood just who they were dealing with. After what seemed like an eternity, the captain sighed and nodded. "Understood, sir," he said, his voice tight with resignation. "I'll contact the control tower." As the plane veered off course, Darius leaned back into his seat, watching the world below shrink as the plane altered its path. The power he had just wielded, the simple act of taking control, was exhilarating. The crew, all of them, had watched him shift the course of the flight. They were all witnesses to his authority. And he knew that no one would ever forget this moment. The minutes passed. The passengers around him barely noticed the change in the air. They were still lost in their own little worlds, but Darius's mind was working, already moving ahead. He had won this small battle, but the war was far from over. This wasn't just about a spoiled cup of coffee. It was about standing up, about making sure that disrespect didn't go unpunished. The airline had learned something that day, and it would pay the price for its mistakes. By the time the plane landed, Darius's assistant had already initiated the formal complaint. The media was waiting for the story to break. The airline would be forced to deal with the fallout. A few hours after landing, Darius's phone buzzed again, the airline's head office apologizing profusely for the incident. But Darius wasn't interested in apologies. He was interested in action. He was interested in making them understand the full scope of what had just happened. "I've already set things in motion," Darius said, his voice calm but unwavering. "This isn't about your apologies. This is about the long-term consequences of disrespect. And believe me, the consequences will be felt. Within days, the story was all over the news. The airline's stock plummeted. Executives were forced to resign. And a new CEO took the reins, promising change. But Darius knew this was just the beginning. The company had learned, perhaps too late, that in this world, respect isn't something you take for granted. It's something you earn, or you face the consequences. The airline, once a symbol of luxury, had been humbled. And Darius King had made sure of it. Darius King's actions on that flight weren't just about a spilled cup of coffee. They were a powerful statement about respect, something that should never be taken for granted, no matter who you are. He didn't need to raise his voice or lash out. His actions alone made it clear that when you've earned your place, you demand respect, and you don't let anyone take that from you. But the real lesson here? It's not just about standing up for yourself in a moment of frustration. It's about knowing your worth, about knowing when to act, and when to let things go. Life isn't always fair, but the choices we make when faced with disrespect shape who we are and what we stand for. So let me ask you this, when was the last time you stood up for yourself, not out of anger, but because you knew you deserved more? What would you do if someone tried to diminish your value? If this story inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe to Narrative Tales New, and share your thoughts below. Let's keep the conversation going. Because stories like these, and the lessons they teach, are the ones that shape us all.